are noble. They are real human beings that deserve to be honored for their courage, their determination, the ability to survive in terrible circumstances. The people we are honoring tonight, that we are memorializing, are definitely not the least. They are strong, they are courageous, and it is an honor to be able to celebrate their lives.
Hello, my name is Tim Houchin, and I'm the founder and executive director of Hope for Restoration. Each year since 2014, we have organized events in recognition of National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, held every December 21st. We call our event The Longest Night. The event traditionally consists of an interfaith memorial service, candlelight vigil, and other activities related to Homeless Persons Memorial Day. Due to the current pandemic, we will not be able to conduct our traditional Longest Night publicly. Instead, this year's event will be a virtual presentation similar to the program of our traditional public event, and will air on December 21st at 7 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook. Now, our virtual presentation of The Longest Night is made possible only with the help of the Women Drivers Interfaith Group of Orange County. Welcome to our second episode of a series of broadcasts that are intended to inform, educate, and perhaps entertain our audience. Each episode will feature special guests that we will interview regarding issues of homelessness, and in particular, conversations pertaining to homeless mortality. These episodes and others will be aired on December 21st during the day beginning at 1 p.m. and will continue until the premiere of our Longest Night virtual presentation at 7 p.m. Today's program will feature a musical guest. Our guest will describe his feelings about inequality and homelessness, and he will remind us that homelessness is not only unique to communities in California, but in other places in the world as well. But first, we will interview Dr. Neil Schwartz, who is the medical director of Families Together of Orange County. Dr. Schwartz will discuss an impending dermatological crisis among our street homeless populations, Suboxone, and the value of building relationships with homeless clients. Let's welcome Dr. Neil Schwartz. Today's guest is Dr. Neil Schwartz. He is the medical director of Families Together of Orange County. Hello, Dr. Schwartz. Tell us about yourself and what it is that you do.
I'm a family practitioner, board certified. I've been board certified since 2004. I've been practicing medicine through training for about almost 20 years. And I used to have a private practice in New York City, and then I had some online practices, and now I work in a public clinic through CalOptima and at Families Together of Orange County in Tustin, California. And I was a physician here, and then I became one of the directors, one of the medical directors. And we have expanded into every reach of homelessness, drug addiction, just the community. We are covering the safety net of the entire community as far as I'm concerned, and our CEO keeps expanding.
Doctor, can you identify for us the medical conditions most common to persons experiencing street homelessness?
One of the many programs we're doing is like a dispatch service where we go out to homeless people in distress in the field. And that's one of our many services. And we have large RVs and we can take care of them medically. But for the majority of it has been abscesses, skin abscesses from using heroin needles. And, that is probably the lion's share of all the calls. And it kind of relates into the Suboxone program. When I first started the Suboxone program, I knew nothing about Suboxone, but I said, if we could just control some of these abscesses, this is like a dermatological emergency. We can even just do that. I would be happy with the Suboxone program, but it's gone much further than that. And it's all related. The drug, poverty, homelessness, infection, they're all just one thing called, living in a very imbalanced situation. The drugs are just part of the whole thing.
Doctor, please explain what Suboxone is for those of us that don't know.
Suboxone is the methadone 2.0, methadone that has been invented by the chemists to be able to, as a long-acting opioid, to get you off heroin, but without the easy ability to abuse it like methadone was. So it is replacing methadone in a lot of cases and replacing heroin and bringing people from a totally chaotic lifestyle to still somewhat physically addicted to opioid at a lower level and a smoother level. And so they're neither getting high nor getting sick is the quote that I'm getting from most of my patients. I'm no longer getting high and I'm no longer getting sick. And that's when you're an idealist, you don't want anyone on any type of opioid. But if you're just being reasonable risk benefit and you're grounded in doing the best you can, this Suboxone has proven, I would say, relatively miraculous this season so far.
From my understanding, a few years ago in the riverbed encampments here in Orange County, there were homeless individuals, homeless medics, if you will, that would perform surgical procedures on persons with abscesses right there in the encampment itself. And this sounds absolutely crazy to me. Have you heard of this happening in your experience?
It is crazy both ways. To have an ER doctor do abscess removals all day is equally as crazy as someone in the field removing an abscess in the middle of the heat, in the sun, even under shade, in the middle of like a California summer. It is just unreal. Both situations are unreal. And that's why I said I think we're in a bit of a dermatological crisis. And that's why the solution's really to get people off the needles for not just the opioid problem, but for the infection problem. It's not what an ER doctor signed up for. And I agree. It's also not appropriate to go to an encampment and whip out a blue cloth and start lancing people down to the bone. Both cases are completely not at the level you'd expect as a human being.
Doctor, name some other conditions that you frequently treat among persons experiencing homelessness.
Well, now we have the colder weather, so the upper respiratory tract infections and the allergies and pretty much, what you'd expect from being out in the cold, and a lot of musculoskeletal complaints, other skin complaints that aren't drug related, like cellulitis of the legs from having fluid on the legs, for example. Or having a cut and then getting the whole leg infected. That's as expected and is commonly seen, as well as the respiratory illnesses that you'd expect from being out in the cold as well.
Homeless deaths have spiked in 2020 with record numbers seen in jurisdictions across the state. For example, this year in Orange County, more than 300 homeless lives were lost. Some homeless advocates speculate that COVID-19 must be the cause of the increase in mortality among homeless persons. But we're hearing the opposite from health experts and government officials. What do you see as the cause of the record increases in homeless deaths this year?
Well, rather than speculate, those death reports are probably available, so we could find out what the percentage of COVID those deaths are without having to speculate on theory.
Yeah.
So if I would just say, you could play the conversation both ways. If they were COVID, then we can use common sense to try to explain that. And if they were not COVID, we can maybe explain it from the psychological crisis that the country's going through with just the added stress. If you're on the fringe or on the edge, and then you add a stressor, whether it be from OD, suicide, or even just, other types of physical, mental pressures, who's going to die first. It's the ones that are closest to death. So, if the numbers can pan that out, but this has been a stressful year for those who are very healthy, certainly for those who are very unhealthy.
That's a good point. Our coroner provides us with very little information regarding homeless deaths, which are often categorized as pending investigation. I have called the coroner's office a year after a death, and the cases still remain open with no updated information in the record. Many advocates feel that they are not getting the necessary information that would help them to create more effective methods of providing resources, services, and outreach that would address this problem.
I'm not sure because I don't do cause of death that much, but I would pivot the conversation emphasis to the cause of death for someone who is close to death doesn't seem as relevant as what can we do to get people away from the edge of the cliff. I think people who are near the edge of the cliff are going to fall off the cliff. So the cause of what pushed them over and what wind came in and threw them off the cliff, to me, is irrelevant relative to why are so many people on the brink of death. That seems like something not only we can get involved in, but it seems to make more sense as a bang for the buck effort to help the situation.
Is there anyone in the medical profession that is gathering data on homeless deaths, and what data would you need to determine causes of death statistically among the homeless population?
I would pose, not as a fact, not as just more of an opinion, that all good deeds that are done for the homeless population that are done without the attached empowerment lesson or empowering ideas or an empowerment thrust, if you were to just take care of someone who's homeless without a conversation of empowerment, I believe you would oftentimes do them a disservice by taking care of them without teaching them how to fish. And that is an old cliche and an old saying, but I believe if you just coddle people who are already unempowered, they get less empowered. But if you coddle them and do a whole conversation on empowerment, meaning getting them more powerful to take care of themselves, you have entered the world of transformation and not the world of daycare. And I think that everyone, including the people that work in the shelters, to the doctors and the nurse practitioners, everyone needs to have an attitude of, I'm taking care of you and going to have a conversation about empowerment every single time I speak to you. I'm not just going to take care of you. I think that's it's a psychological trick. It's a psychological way of being. And I think it should be flat toned and everyone should be on board with it.
During this pandemic, we have seen Project Room Key, which places those homeless that are most vulnerable to contract COVID-19 into motel rooms. That accounts for about half of all the homeless, and the remaining half that do not qualify for Project Room Key are left on the streets to figure out how to protect themselves from the virus. What kind of sense does this make?
I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on that, but one of my feels is that a lot of the stronger ones that are on the street, maybe they wouldn't even choose to do that, or they're doing their own thing, or maybe they don't need as much as, say, someone, COVID or not, someone who's really, I know the people that I've gotten into those motels, they were otherwise incapacitated medically regardless of COVID, and they really needed like some sort of recuperative, way of recovering from whatever's going on. And, other people just might not need it, COVID or not. I don't know if someone on the street is more likely to get COVID than someone in, say, a motel with a bunch of other people in motels, and they're still mingling in the hallways. You know what I mean? I think if you're safe outside without COVID, you may still be safe outside with COVID. Just it's maybe not as much of a deal unless you're sick or like recovering from something physical.
As a benefit to public health during the pandemic, what are your feelings regarding municipally authorized encampments with porta potties and hand washing stations that will provide more sanitary conditions and allow homeless persons there to practice social distancing?
I think
just for the crisis. I think during the crisis, yeah. I'm saying during the pandemic.
I think there's some of these macro experiments on society, like whether to set up the tent city or whether to set up the porta potties and stuff. I think people should take a really good look at what happens when they do it. They can try it in a small area, and then if it indulges a behavior pattern that is obviously worse for the community, they should pull it back and try something else. I feel that a lot of this stuff is trial and error when it comes to the macro solutionism, and there is a behavioral pattern of humanity that does indulge when there's we want to set up home. So if you set up things that make it feel like home, we have a nature to now encamp. And I think some of this stuff is speculation until you just try it in a small area. And then you get to see, is this community now better or worse? Or has it grown or has it, shrunk? And I'd say take that data and unbiased and say, listen, we got to come up with something a little more innovative than what's been done so far. And it really takes a little bit of an inventor to fix some of the tougher, nuanced problems like this.
What kind of advice can you give me so that I can pass it along to persons experiencing homelessness? What advice can you give to improve their medical health and well-being?
I think, homeless or not, the key to a medical center that offers a lot of wellness ideas like ours, we have, dietitians and strength training coaches and all kinds of cool wellness approaches. I think the key is a relationship. So I think everyone who's worked with patients and with homeless people will agree that the relationship is the only thing that's really healing someone. And that is what will maybe inspire them to take care of themselves. So the stronger these relationships, the more inspired they will be to take care of themselves. I think one of the reasons my Suboxone patients are doing so well is because we make it fun to come in. There's a relationship, there's a fun time. We don't take it too seriously, even though it's life or death. We try not to make it so heavy. And then you have a relationship. And that relationship, they don't want to let it down. Like, they know that if they are behaving in a way that's not good for their health, then I'm going to be, I never get upset at them, but they know that I'll feel like somehow our relationship got bruised a little bit. And that is motivating, I think. So all the outreach workers, I think if they consciously focus that my impact on this person is going to be purely based on my relationship with them, then the outreach people will be empowered to have a bigger impact. You're not going to help anyone by giving them cholesterol medications. You're not going to help anyone by giving them diabetic medications. Those things are just Band-Aids. The only way you can help someone is to inspire them. And one of the ways to inspire people is through relationship. So that's the angle, I think.
As far as Suboxone, is it the drug itself or the way that you are administering it that should be credited with success, as you put it?
This is similar to other medications. It's both, where one gives you a quick fix and the relationship then solidifies the continuation of the approach. Then the drug is there when you need it, and then the relationship is there when you need it. And it would be similar to a diabetic med. If someone came into me with a sugar of 500, I wouldn't say, hey, we just got to build a relationship. I'd have to give them the diabetic medicine very unenthusiastically to make them feel reasonably okay for the minute. And then once they can think clearly, we can talk about getting them actually in shape. But until they can think clearly, if I say go hit the treadmill while they're completely dizzy and feeling weird and sweaty and just feeling horrible, they can't think clear enough to start on any program whatsoever on empowerment. So they work in tandem. And I would say the drug itself, Suboxone, I give a lot of credit to the chemists who came up with this idea. It's very clever. It's just very savvy, and they get that credit. And then on top of that, you build a powerful relationship on that, and you have synchronicity there. You have little exponential impact.
Thank you very much, Dr. Schwartz. Is there anything that you would like to add to our conversation today?
I've been in California 10 years. I was in New York before that. And in the 10 years that I've been here, the homeless population, unless I'm just getting more keenly aware of it, it seems like it's blossoming and expanding at a rate that it seems that it is so obvious that it's everyone's problem. And maybe when in the 80s and the 90s, people were in a different mentality where I'm over here, you're over there. But these days, no matter how well you think you're doing in life, if you have to step over over people to get to the water fountain or whatever, it's all your problem. And I think until we get our priorities straight as a community, that this homeless problem is not the homeless person's problem. It's all of our problem. And it's a very, distracting problem. How can people start businesses if there's homeless people and they're in front of their business? And this is everyone's problem. And that needs to be prioritized, just like education needs to be prioritized. And I think we don't have quite our priorities quite straight on this. Now, as far as the method for combating it, I think any action or any humane action that doesn't come with certain educational empowerments is a complete enabler of what is a behavioral pattern that is showing to be growing. So I think that you can't just throw money at it. I don't think you can just throw energy at it. I don't think you can just throw goodwill at it. You have to be very strategic in how you approach a problem this psychologically tricky.
Thank you very much for your time and especially your valuable insights, Dr. Schwartz. We've been interviewing Dr. Schwartz. He is the medical director at the Families Together of Orange County. And we thank him very much for being with us today. Okay, special thanks to Dr. Schwartz for his words and valuable insights on homelessness. Our next guest is a talented artist and musician. His name is Sean Taylor, and he will remind us that homelessness exists in more places than many of us would think. Sean's new song is a story about a place where extreme wealth and poverty collide. If it sounds like home, it's not. Sean's story takes us to a street named The Strand, where millionaires play while homeless persons sleep on the sidewalks in his native London, England. The name of the song is Cold Wind Blows, and it's coming up right after this message.
Well, my name is Sean Taylor, and I'm from London in England, and I'm a professional touring musician. I've been touring for about 20 years nearly. I've recorded and released 11 albums. The last 6 have been recorded in Austin, Texas, with a guy called Mark Hallman. I'm about to release a new album called Lockdown, which was written and recorded in lockdown. I began writing this song about 3 years ago. I was visiting a friend's art exhibition in London, in just off Charing Cross Station, which is near Trafalgar Square. And the big road there is called the Strand. And I was walking along there, and it's one of the most expensive parts of London. It's really wealthy, really expensive shops, and it's just like, but at the same time I noticed just one after another people sleeping on the street, homeless. Just, it was like the two worlds. You couldn't have exaggerated it anymore, and it was just incredibly heartbreaking. And I went to this art exhibition, which was very expensive, and I was like, just couldn't really concentrate on any of the work, which was really good, but I just couldn't get my mind away from what I'd just seen, which was this huge, inequality right before my eyes. And I began writing this song, A Cold Wind Blows, and talking about the people that you meet.
He was an army man, served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Then he came home and stayed on the streets of London's Taurus on Trafalgar Square. They might get you some change if they care. More light to feed the birds than the voices left unheard tonight. Ride along the strand, sleeping bags by newspaper stand. It might be a rich man's road, but if you're homeless, that cold wind blows. For the homeless, a cold wind blows. We all know that the writing's on the wall. No one who gets the poor when we fall. My only companion is a dog in a blanket, my best friend. My neighbor is only in her teens. She's still young, but only in her dreams. Society only cares when the millionaires grab on tight. Ride along the strand, sleeping bags by newspaper stand. It might be a rich man's road, but if you're homeless, that cold wind blows. For the homeless, a cold wind blows. Ride along the strand, sleeping bags by newspaper stand. It might be a rich man's road, but if you're homeless, that cold wind blows. The homeless, that cold wind blows. For the homeless, a cold wind blows. For the homeless, that cold wind blows. A cold blow, a cold blow, cold wind blow.
Well, all right, that's it for this broadcast. Very special thanks go out to Dr. Neil Schwartz of Families Together of Orange County and our special musical guest, Sean Taylor. Thank you for watching. Be sure to catch upcoming episodes as they are broadcast. Please remember the virtual presentation of The Longest Night will premiere on December 21st, beginning at 7 p.m. Don't forget the broadcast of this program and others in a special series will also air on Facebook on December 21st, beginning earlier in the day at about 1 o'clock p.m., leading up to The Longest Night's main event at 7 p.m. For more details, go to www.facebook.com/Hope for Restoration. And please remember there's a 4 between hope and restoration, a number 4 between hope and restoration. Thanks again, and we will see you all again real soon.